Well, a woman was walking on the beach and she found a genie's lamp. She rubs it and the genie appears and she says, "Oh, good, I have 3 wishes." He says, "No, only one. I'm downsizing, economy, inflation, just one. So what will it be?" And she says, well, she didn't hesitate. She said, "I want peace in the Middle East." And she pulls out a map and she says, "I want this country to get along with that country, and I want the warring to stop there, and I want these people to be blessed and feel special, and I want these people to de-arm and nuclear weapons to stop there, and this country get along with that country." And he says, "Gadzooks." He says, "Those countries have been at war for thousands of years. I'm not that good. Ask for something else." So she says, "Well, okay, how about Mr. Right?" She said, "You know, a man who's considerate, fun, likes to cook, helps with the house cleaning, is romantic, gets along with my family, doesn't watch too many sports, earns a great living, and is totally faithful to me and adores me. And that's what I would wish for." So the genie lets out this long sigh and he says, "Let me see that map again." There you go. Let me see that map again. Oh, the single ladies. Oh, the single ladies. So I think you laughed the loudest. So maybe you won't achieve peace in the Middle East, but today we're going to talk about the idea that you are called to be a peacemaker. As we are concluding our series on the Beatitudes, these last 2 really address the ability to be a peacemaker. Now, maybe you came here this morning because you wanted to have a direct personal contact with the living Spirit of God in you, an infilling or a refueling for your soul. But your surface mind may have thought, well, I'm going to come, I'm going to hear Reverend Cherie, I'm going to hear an inspirational message, I'm going to fellowship and celebrate the 2nd year anniversary and all of that. But the truth is, the deeper dimension of your soul pulled you here to hear the truth of your being, the reality of who you are and who you've come on earth to be. And as we conclude our series on these Beatitudes, we've found that Jesus is giving us attitudes of consciousness that, when understood and practiced, are life transforming. And he sets out an agenda not only to call us to embrace a new way of being, but in these last 2 you'll see that he calls us to usher in a new era of being, a new way of being, peace in the Middle East and more, a whole new era of being. He calls us to take action, to not only transform our own lives, but to show up as a presence in the world that is transformative to wherever we go, whoever we interact with, and how we show up on the planet. The 7th Beatitude is, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Children of God. And the 8th is, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now, we're using 2 books, Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount and Prayers of the Cosmos by Neil Douglas Klotz, who gives us the Aramaic interpretation and culture and custom in the words that Jesus was speaking. And he shares that peace in Aramaic is a condition of mind that's fundamental to the tranquility of the soul. So it's a state of mind that's fundamental to the tranquility and peace in your soul. And then in the Near East, peacemakers were those who found peace within themselves and developed it to the ability that they could release it into their community. They were the people in ancient times who sat outside the city gate and settled the disputes. People would come there that had arguments with each other, and they were the ones that were settling the disputes and the arguments among people. In Aramaic, the word children means offspring. So any source of apparent thought, an offspring of biology as a child. And the words shall be called. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. To be called, shall be called. Those words is to be a channel for the expression of something. So mix all of those definitions together, and one translation, Aramaic translation of this, is, "Blessed are the peacemakers, Well, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. And it translates, blessed are those who live from the fundamental tranquility of their soul, for they shall be channels for the pure potentiality of God. When you are living the peace of Christ, you become a channel for all the potential of Spirit to be expressed on earth. And so today I want you to turn to a person you're sitting near, and I want you to say to them, you'll never see me this way again. Look at somebody across the room. You'll never see me this way again. Now, good. A lot of you want to change. What you've just agreed to with your neighbor is that you are on a journey of spiritual growth, that you are on a journey of transformation. You've agreed that you are growing into your greatest potential, and you've also agreed that you're not here to change the world while you stay the same, right? We know this. Every day we meet ourselves in 100 different variations, and we're called to the opportunity to stand the highest and best of who we are. And now that you've announced that, now that you've given voice to that and put words to that, that you want to be more your most authentic self. You'll never see me this way again. I'm changing constantly. I'm advancing in consciousness constantly. Now that you've declared that for yourself, you'll find that your prayers are going to change also. And your prayers, instead of being then, God, can I have this? Or God, please give me this? Or God, would you work this out? Or God, could you solve this problem? Your prayer is going to become, make me a channel. Make me an instrument of your peace. Make me an instrument. Let me be an expression of your love. Let me be an expression of peace on the planet. Now, I know in your prayers we all need things. We all need employment. We all need a job, a car, retirement account, all of the stuff. But those are external things. And I don't want you to leave here today saying, Cherie said those are bad or that we shouldn't pray for those. But they're externals. And when you become a peacemaker, when you declare that I am in a process, I'm on a spiritual journey, and I'm in a process of transformation, and I'm living the fundamental conditions of my soul, when you touch that fundamental tranquility of your soul, you transcend self-interest. You transcend the self-interest of the things and the stuff. And what you do then is you actively will the destiny of your soul. The destiny of your soul. You transcend that self-interest. When you touch the fundamental tranquility of your soul, you open to something bigger than your little consumer issues, right? Haven't we been dubbed the generation of conspicuous consumption? Because we are all about the stuff. We have more storage units in America than, because our garages are full and now we got to go to the storage unit. We are the generation of conspicuous consumption. And now when you make this dedication to live from the tranquility of your soul, all of that seems to calm down and ease itself out of your life, and the little consumer issues aren't so important. You come into alignment with a great power and an ideation of the universe. You come into alignment with divine mind, and then you're not trying to use your power to get stuff, which you couldn't do anyway. But you're not trying to use your power to get stuff. You're using your power to be a grand expression of divine mind. You're learning to use your power to become a grand expression, a child of the living Spirit. And then, like Solomon, who said, when they said, what do you want? He said, give me wisdom and understanding. All the rest of it, all the little stuff takes care of itself. When you live from that ideation of spirit and you live in relationship to divine mind, all the externals take care of themselves. It's an amazing trust walk. You know, it's free falling on the universe. It's free falling on the universe to learn to live this way. But Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And when we live this consciousness, when we step into that life vibration, we begin to see that some of the things that are going down on the planet that are business as usual aren't really business as usual, right? Now you're stepping into a higher life vibration, and all of a sudden the world is expanded, and you begin to see that you're vibrating here, and a lot of the world is vibrating in business as usual here. The things that we've been hypnotized to and enculturated in and have grown up thinking, things like war is inevitable. War is inevitable, we think. War is business as usual. War stimulates the economy. How many of you grew up hearing that? You didn't? Where'd you grow up? We've grown up with the idea that expanding the prison systems will protect us. We direct less and less money to our educational system, to our programs, and to our arts, and more to defense. Less money to the care of our children, our elderly, and the environment, and all of those things of goodwill, and more to the things that bring, quote, profit and sustainability to the world. But peacemakers are those who have transcended self-interest and shattered this illusion that business as usual is that business. And they've come to see, and I think everyone in this room, we've come to see that war is obsolete. And that by studying war and talking about war, and I have to say tweeting about war, about building weapons and armoring up, is a consciousness that's still stuck in survival issues. It's a consciousness that has not yet evolved as a peacemaker. It's a consciousness that has not yet evolved to understand the real meaning of civilization. And the real meaning of civilization is the development and the advance of love, the development and the advance of art and beauty and the environment and health and the cultivation of the soul. Peacemakers understand that peace does not come by treaties or agreements or wars or rumors of war or boundaries or walls or weapons of mass destruction or any other of the survival ideas that we get stuck in. Those are primitive states of consciousness that were very much needed at one time when we're organizing into systems in terms of how we live with each other. But those are Old Testament ways, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's Old Testament thinking. Jesus said, I came not to abolish that law. I'm not saying don't have defense mechanism systems. He said, I came not to abolish that law, but to fulfill it, to take it to the next level, to come to a place on the planet where we no longer need all those defense systems because we're living in relationship, we're living from the fundamental condition of a mind that lives with peace. You see, I came not to abolish that law, but to fulfill it, to take it to the next level, to transcend self-interest and to replace it with a new law of grace and truth and love for all. When we understand that the survival issues of humankind have already all been met by Spirit in every way, that we've been given all the wisdom, and from that wisdom now all the technology to feed, to educate, to shelter, to clothe every person on the planet, that there's already enough money and enough resources to over-survive, right? That all that needs to happen is a shift. And that shift takes place in consciousness, a shift of our priorities, a shift of expressing, where we each live expressing the pure potentiality of God. Then we'll become a generous and continuous sharing people, sharing love and sharing resources. And we'll live in a world where we live as one human family. This is the advent of what's coming. And as peacemakers, way back in Jesus' time, he's saying, blessed are peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. We each have a responsibility to be a peacemaker, to carry this consciousness on the planet, to catch and hook into the higher vibration of living from a faith and a trust that my worth and my interest and your interest are the same. So this morning I ask, what are you a peacemaker for? What's expressing from the fundamental tranquility of your soul? This is a key question because your soul is calling you to release an energy to the world in some way, to be called a child of God and to be expressing the pure potential of Spirit. It doesn't have to be some grand celebrity thing at all. Hazel, my mother, gave her life to being a good mother. I stand before you today, her legacy. Every time I come up and give a message that's inspirational or educational or funny or whatever, I'm carrying forward her legacy. You touch her consciousness when you come here on Sunday. And when we live our purpose, we live our grand ideas, they're timeless. They're timeless, and they stay in the universal consciousness forever. Her purpose continues to be released to the world in ways of love, which is what she gave her life to. So, Spirit wants to do something great in you. So you want to put yourself in service to a grand idea. Again, you don't have to solve peace in the Middle East. It doesn't have to be a really big thing. But you have to put yourself in service to a grand idea. God wants to hook you up with something that is eternal, so that 50 or 100 years from now, when someone mentions your name or mentions what you stood for, the vibration of your very soul is still felt. Is still felt. That's how we live as children, as peacemakers. Conscious or unconscious, you can do this. 2 examples: Nicole Brown Simpson, Ronald Goldman. See? You still feel their vibration. They gave their lives to raise awareness of domestic violence. There's enough hundreds of thousands of dollars in public service announcements could not do for domestic violence what Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman did to raise awareness of domestic violence. Could they? And years later now, is it the 25-year anniversary or something? You say their name, and the vibration is still there. Nicole, unfortunately, I feel, was unconscious to her purpose, right? She didn't catch the grand idea that she came on earth to share. Dr. Robert Mueller, a friend of mine, former Assistant Secretary General to the United Nations, he survived Nazi Germany, and when I met him, he was Chancellor for University of Peace in Costa Rica. He got up every day at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he would write for 2 hours ideas for peace in the world. And when I met him, it was 1997 or 8, and he had an idea to write 2,000 ideas by the year 2000. Ideas for peace that could be implemented, and a lot of them were. He ended up writing 7,000 ideas before his death. Ideas for peace. But he got up at 4, write for 2 hours, then he'd go back to sleep, then he got up at a regular time, fed his chickens, ate breakfast, went down to the University for Peace, and in a retired kind of way, lived out that life. Say his name, and you think of peace, you think of optimism, you think he has decide to be happy, decide never to be negative. All of the ideas for peace that he wrote are alive when you speak his name. Here's a little spiritual practice that you can do to catch your own grand idea if you don't already know what it is. And that is, just before you fall asleep at night, if you tell yourself, while I'm sleeping, give me ideas of peacemaking. You say that before you go to sleep. While I'm sleeping, give me ideas of how I can love more deeply. While I'm sleeping, give me ideas of how I can release the gifts of my soul on the planet. While I'm sleeping, give me ideas of how I can cultivate the inner genius within me. And if you do that little teeny tiny practice, you'll discover that your soul will begin to speak to you. It'll speak to you in ideas, hunches, dreams, insights, waking and sleeping. It will begin to speak to you. And it will show you what's seeking to be born through you. And then, get ready. Because in the last beatitude, Jesus says, as you step out on your grand idea, don't be surprised if you get persecuted. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He goes on to say, blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you falsely. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. Now, this is his concluding beatitude. At first reading, it seems to be completely inconsistent with everything he's been teaching, right? For the last 4 weeks, he's been saying that the will of God for us is harmony and peace and joy. He tells us again and again, if we use right thinking and right use of spiritual law, that our mourning will be turned to joy, that we'll take dominion of our lives, that we'll come into self-mastery, that everything's going to be perfect. And now, in this summary of statements, it's startling to hear that we're going to be persecuted if we do all this. Hardly a good ending. It's like, What? It seems startling, and yet it's perfectly correct. Here's why. What we have to understand in this final beatitude is that the source of all persecution is none other than ourselves. Ourselves. We're the ones. Emmett Fox says, Sermon on the Mount, his book, there is no outside persecutor, but only our own lower selves, our lower states of consciousness. We all have them. Some days I'm living them full time, right? When we find right thinking very difficult, Mr. Fox says, it is because we are very strongly tempted to hold the wrong thoughts about some situation, person, or about ourselves. When we are tempted to give way to fear, anger, or depression, then we are being persecuted. And we are told that this is an extremely fortunate condition, for it is in such moments that our soul is really advancing. Blessed are you if you're persecuted. In this last beatitude, Jesus concludes his teaching by telling us this summation. What he's saying is, every spiritual advance we make involves an encounter with our own lower nature. We're overcoming that. Our lower nature wants to indulge our old habit of thought, wants to indulge the way we've always done it, wants to take the easy, lazy, simple, familiar way out. And Jesus points out to he said, the lower self will rise up and vehemently resist our efforts to change and even persecute us when we try to turn in a new direction, right? Paul said, the good that I would do, I don't do because that's how I am. That's the lower consciousness. Jesus also points out to his listeners what his listeners already knew. Society does not easily tolerate an advancing spirit. If you live as a world transformer, if you live spiritually awake just in your own family, right? You get this. You get this beatitude. If you live as a world transformer, you're likely to run into criticism, opposition, and persecution. Jesus doesn't commiserate with us, though. He says, shake off the dust from your feet and leave that place. Dust is negativity, feet are understanding. So he's saying, shake off your understanding and keep moving forward. That persecution, he says, is an invitation to look within at what old beliefs we're being asked to release and what new beliefs we're being asked to embrace. And he says when a new way of living is trying to break through our ego structure or trying to lift up the heavy weight of lower consciousness, it doesn't always feel good. But he says rejoice. Rejoice and recognize that those moments when you feel persecution are really moments in the birth of your soul. When you're moving into something more, something new. When I took yoga and we would get into these positions and my body would tremble trying to hold the positions like shaking vibrantly rather than my yoga teacher said, your body is making new neural pathways to recognize the strength of holding that position. So when it does that, she says, that's good. It'll go away as you get stronger. So I like to think that Jesus is telling us to rejoice and recognize that those moments of persecution are really birthing new moments in our soul. New moments in our soul. You're being offered an opportunity to expand into more than you have ever been before, to expand into your Christ consciousness, and that is his summary statement. So all of the Beatitudes give us tools that contribute to our mastery of living. We are here to become transformers in the field of consciousness. These 8 summary ideas have been his top 10. They said he had a prepared sermon, a prepared script, that he worked from a manuscript because they were so important to him. So I want to close today by just getting into a little bit of prayer and reading through the interpretations of the 8. Let my voice be your voice. Remember that these were what I like to call living transmissions of spirit, that this was Jesus in his highest mind and unification with God mind, what he intuited as ways of being and living to achieve universal Christ consciousness, to become one with that. And so let's just take a moment and know that we are the healers, we are the leaders, we are the teachers, we are the prayers, we are the light on the path of life, and that we are called to live and be in new ways and to usher in an era on the planet that moves toward greater and greater sustainability and peace and love. Before we do this, just put your hand on your heart and say one more time, this is the last time you'll ever see me this way. This is together, this is the last time you'll ever see me this way. I am a spiritual being advancing in the pure potentiality of God. Together, I am a spiritual being advancing in the pure potentiality of God. Yes, you are. And so on that hillside with that prepared manuscript, we see him say, soften what is rigid within you. And I'll let it be in first person. Soften what is rigid within me. Let me be reconciled inside by love. In humility and surrender to the divine, let me harness what is wild and unrestrained within me, so that I may take dominion of my life. I hold the high watch to draw the dream of my heart, knowing in you, God, it shall be fulfilled. I let the passionate fire within me give me the courage to act as I live ever closer to my true essence of love. As I touch the tranquility of my soul, I become an expression of the pure potentiality of God. And I rejoice as I expand into more than I have ever been before. I am a spiritual being advancing in the pure potentiality of God. For these teachings, for this loving revelation of the living transmissions of Spirit now, we give thanks and we dedicate and consecrate ourselves to taking on these attitudes of being and to being a world transformer, a life transformer, a world worker of light. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Amen.